Hi, everybody. Hi, Carrie.
Hi there. Very excited for today's chat.
Yes, me too. So, Carrie and I were doing some mom math, and we figured out that between the two of us, collectively, we have 46 years of parenting experience. And we thought today we would just talk about it. What have we learned in those 46 years?
Oh,
Not that our oldest are 46, but Carrie's oldest is 25, my oldest is 21, and that's how we came up with the collective 46. So let's talk about it. What have we learned? What can we share with our listeners that they can take away from our experiences?
all right. So, my first burning piece of advice or lesson that I've learned is about listening.
Hmm.
So, we can hear our children, but are we really listening to what they have to say?
Oh, I
And
like that.
yeah, and when they're talking to us, are we like present in the conversation and actively listening without that burning desire to, you know, use it as a lesson or, oh, I hear something in there. I want to share with you my experience. Or, oh, wait, stop. Let me correct you on that. But really just spending undivided time with them just listening, because a lot of times they're not looking for advice, they just want you to listen.
Hmm. Can you think of a time that you listened to your own advice in parenting with that one?
Yeah, I mean, a lot more lately as they are older and they're young adults. When we're talking on the phone, neither of them live at home, and half the year I don't even live in the same state with them. So as we're talking on the phone and they're updating me either about their day or a class at school, I find myself wanting to give a direction, right? Like, oh, well, did you think about this? Or maybe you should try this. For example,
So
my
you want to just jump in and try and
I want to jump in and try to give what I think is the best idea or path that they should follow. So
okay, I cut you off. You were started to say, for
that's okay.
example.
So for example, my oldest is exploring an internship. He has switched his major a few times, and so he's now really settled on his major right now,
Okay.
psychology, and he's like, I think it'd be great to have an internship. So great idea. But I really had to watch my words and I had to resist the urge to start either asking questions about it. Oh, like, well, what are you going to do? Did you talk to your advisor? Oh, I know somebody. And I had to just sit with my own discomfort because I'm the fixer. I think I have such great advice. But no, I just listened. And I'm like, you know what? My kid is really like sharing with me right now. Just listen. Just listen to what he's saying. Validate. So I just kind of did a lot of uh-huh, mm-hmm. And great. Love
Right.
that. But it's hard because I want to go
Sure.
like, well, what are you doing? And when's that going to happen? And what's the time frame? But
And
that's
you're in your head, you're like, "Oh, you can contact this one and that one, and this one might be able to help." But
yeah. Not saying that we can't and shouldn't support and help our kids if we have a connection, but only if they've come to us to ask for that level of support.
and that's so important. You know that's a great segue for me into one of something that's really become so prevalent to me as my kids have gotten older is my visions, what I thought my kids' young adulthood would look like or where they would go in life. Those are my visions. And that doesn't mean that's what my kids' visions are for themselves. And that's something I think is so important. Like something that comes up for me is college. Like
Yeah.
people looking for their, you have high schoolers who are deciding what they want to do. Do they want to go on to college? And it's become, I think, such a societal norm to just expect that the next step is college, but that's not everybody's path.
No.
And I think that's a big struggle for so many parents whose kids want to choose a different path.
Well, it's even happening in the school system too that, right? Test taking, scores, class rank, like everything is very focused to moving on from high school to higher education, right? There's not a lot
Sure.
of, I
Mhm.
mean, there's not a lot of conversation around other
Choices.
pathways.
Mhm.
So they're surrounded and with their peers too, right? Oh, what college, what tours are you going on? They
Right.
come in, they're wearing different t-shirts and sweatshirts and hoodies from various schools. I remember this one time, I mean, Ryan was little, my youngest. So, I mean, he could be 8, 9. And for whatever reason, he loved Duke. I cannot tell you why.
Okay.
My family, my brother and my dad, my parents had lived in North Carolina, but there was no reason why Duke.
There was no connection.
No connection. We're not alumni,
Okay.
but he wanted Duke and yeah, blue looked good on him, but I have no
But that's not a
idea.
reason to pick a school.
So for a while, just in his head, he kept saying Duke, 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 Duke. Now, he's a bright kid, but he did not have the love for school at the middle school and high school. Like that wasn't even an
Sure.
option. So it slowly like just went out of the conversation. But who knows how these things even like get into their vision or into their
Right.
head
Where they
or so.
But it's interesting because those two lessons that you and I have just shared, like listening more than you talk and letting your kids' vision or decisions lead them on their path instead of your own. They go hand in hand, which leads me to something else, which is so
But
important is
can I just add just one statement in there that might be
yeah, of
helpful?
course.
Because so when your kids are saying things that might not align with where you thought they would be going in their life, and maybe you're not sure like what to even say or how to have that conversation or address it, but when they say something like, I don't know if college is right for me, or maybe I should take a gap year. One thing you could say to your child is, okay, tell me more about that, right? Like instead of redirecting them in a direction that you want them to go, or,
Hmm.
oh, well, did you think about this, this, and this? Simply say, why don't you tell me more about that? And maybe you're giving them the opportunity to talk through what's actually going on in their head and in their thought process, like why they're thinking something different than you might be thinking. So just it's a real simple, and actually that line can be used throughout the years when they're struggling with other things or had a crazy day as, a 10-year-old. Like, tell me more about that.
Right. So, but that's what something else that I think is so important is lines of communication.
Okay.
It's all about how you communicate with your kid. When your kid asks you a question, do you want to be the parent that says, because I'm the parent, that's why,
Hmm.
because I said so? Or do you really want to take the opportunity to have a conversation with your child about your choices, about their choices? And it starts early. It starts from a young age. Keeping the lines of communication open, asking questions. That's an interesting decision. Why did you make that decision? Get to know your kid. Find out what's really going on inside their head.
Yeah. And as parents, right, we want to be setting good examples and be the role model. But I think it's also really helpful when we've shared our journey as a young, as a kid, but like maybe where we failed or we got into trouble or we were stuck or
Hmm.
we made a poor decision. Like I know it wasn't obvious to me as a younger parent that that's what I should be doing because I was thinking, oh, I'm supposed to be giving them the right, the good advice or helping them make the right decision, not sharing the failures and the poor choices and normalizing that that's just part of growing up. So it took me a little bit of time to make that switch.
So I like what you're saying is let your kids see that you can be vulnerable.
Mhm.
Let your kids see that you failed.
Right. And so I think that goes hand in hand with communication, right? Like
Hmm.
just being honest. Now, obviously, you're not going to tell your 3 or 5 year old, right, a bad choice you made at 14, but when they're old enough to
Well,
have that conversation or understand, I think it's super helpful so they know that it is okay to fail and to make bad choices. And we're going to love you no matter what and still be here for you. There are going to be consequences, but,
right.
I think we're so much, I was at least focused on making a good choice, making the right choice, and not communicating. I mean, I think I've opened communication now with my children, but there might have
Right.
been some times when they were younger where maybe they didn't feel so comfortable openly talking about because maybe they were scared I was judging or in this. I've talked about it in the very first clip of why I'm doing this is to get
Right.
over
Sure.
that perfection of that came with my ideal of parenting.
I like that. The only thing that I would add to that is making sure your child's in a space or a place where they're ready to hear something that happened to you. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of a time when we jump in and we say our kid might be having an issue, a problem with whatever it is, and you say, "Oh my gosh, something like that happened to me." That might not be the right time where your child is open to hearing your story because it's their story that they're what they're dealing with. Maybe at a different time you say something to them along the lines of, I dealt with something similar. Do you want to hear what my experience was?
Right. And this is
So
where like the dinner conversation might be a great time to go around and talk about, right? Like, oh, the, you know, decision I regret, or, just something,
different conversations at dinner time.
yeah, that
We
really
do
is
that.
the opportunity to have right? That's where the
Yeah.
open communication can come from when it's not someone's in the spotlight. All of you
Right.
are
You don't want to.
sharing.
Right. It's non-crisis situation.
Mhm.
You want just a regular, and you're right, dinner, the car rides,
Yeah.
when everybody's, or my favorite, the golden hour, when everybody's getting ready for bed and everybody's winding down.
Yep. So I'm glad you said that about winding down because it was, again, also one of my favorite times of parenting and the time I got to spend with my children. But for us, it turned into that silly time. And so that's a lesson or a piece of advice I'd like to share with others is that find more times during the day to be silly right along with your children.
Hmm. Yes. I
Laugh
love that.
more,
So important.
laugh more. Everything doesn't have to be on a timetable and about productivity, but find that time when they're doing something really silly that you could just sit right with them and be silly too.
And that's changed. It's not always going to look the same. I remember when they were little having, marching parades through the living room with instruments and stuff, and then um uh, one of our bedtime traditions was tushy. It was actually something my husband did with them most of the time, and I guess we would trade off whoever's putting them to bed, but we would we lived in a two-story house, so it would be the kids would be standing on the stairs, and we would count down 3, 2, 1, tushy, and they would charge up the stairs, and whoever was chasing them would follow, and you had a certain amount of time to try and grab their tushy, like to give their little tushy a squeeze, and then like they would be hiding behind doors, or they would like just wherever they would go.
That's
It's
cute.
like a
That's
but
cute.
the best part of that is we had a black lab named Frank, and he would get involved too. Like, so he would stand on the stairs with them and take off with them too. Like we would say, Frank, do you want to play tushy? And he would go right up to the stairs ready to start. And
That
that
is
was,
so cute. That's such a
yeah,
fun memory. And I bet that your kids will take that with them into their families. That'll be super
that,
cute.
yes. And then
Super
it
fun.
changes. Like, we put on music when we're making dinner. If Jackson's doing homework at the table, we'll just put on music and talk about like the newest albums that just do they call them albums? I don't even know. But the new albums that have just been released, or a new song that my son heard for the first time, it's a way to still be involved in everything that's going on in their lives as they get older.
Yeah. Yeah. So as they're getting older, so one of my other pieces of advice is to slow down
Mm,
and to work on being present and to find time every day that you put your phone away and you just focus on the family, right? Turn off your phone, put it in a different room. Don't be checking, text messages or a work email. Our children are watching all the time,
oh, yes,
and they learn from you and from us that if you are always walking around with your phone in your hand, scrolling, answering texts, doing work all times, they're not learning boundaries, right? Parents
right,
need to have boundaries between work and family at home life. And I know it's really, really challenging because a lot of parents are now also working from home. So when there's 10 minutes between homework and when dinner's going to be ready around the table, resisting the urge to run back into the office to check, you know, 10 minutes worth of emails. Try your
yeah.
best. I know it's super, super hard, and
It's
we're all really, really busy. And I know, jobs are really important, but if
And we
there's,
also live in an age of instant gratification.
yes,
If your boss needs something, he expects it done right there. But
yeah,
setting boundaries is the lesson to take away from this.
right.
Okay.
All right. So what do you have?
So as we're sitting here and talking about all of these wonderful lessons we've learned from our parenting, I think one of the most important things to know as a parent that it's okay not to know. It's okay not to have all of the answers. And it's okay to say that to your kids. It's okay to say, I'm not sure. Let's try and figure that out together. Or, I don't know. I just don't know. And that's okay. And you know what else? It's okay to say you're sorry. It's okay to say, you know what? I made this choice and I don't think it was the right one. I want to take that back Because what are we doing? If we keep saying that our job as parents is to raise good humans, to raise good independent humans, like you said earlier, it's okay to let them know that you're not perfect. You're going to make mistakes. It's how you bounce back from them. It's what you do after you make the mistake. Do
Yeah.
you own it? And do you look for a different answer and a different way out? You know what? We're human. I yelled at you last night. That really wasn't the way I wanted to communicate. What I meant to say was this, or I'm sorry. I'm sorry I handled it that way. I could have done a much better job. Showing your kids that you're human is, I think, the most important part of parenting.
Yeah. And another thing that you could say when they come to you and ask, I don't know how to do this. What do you think? Or, Mom, Dad, how do I XYZ? Well, flip it around and say, I don't know. What do you think?
Mm, that's a good one.
What do you think? And even when they're little, they come up with some really, really interesting ideas,
For sure.
right?
I think it's the innocence that lets them share their perspectives where you're like, I didn't even think about it that way.
Yeah. And one thing that I read about confidence lately is, right, because I was thinking that when they share their ideas with you, you're like, wow, right. You know, that is where confidence comes from. When they have had an idea or they've had to figure it out on their own and they feel joy about their own solution, not from the parent praising them on how they did something or what they did.
Yes, that video we recently watched, and I wish I could remember who it
It's
was.
Mel Robbins.
Oh, okay. Mel Robbins, that competence, not praise, builds confidence.
Yes.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you. So, I think that we have shared a lot with you today, and we'd really love, even though Jessica and I together have 46 years of parenting experience,
Sounds like a lot.
we know. Yeah, how is that possible when we're only 35? Like,
I don't know. That's a great question.
I don't get it. I don't know. We maybe need to revisit that mom math. But anyway, we would love to hear from our listeners what parenting advice you would love to share with us or others. What have you learned along your parenting journey? So please reach out, send us an email at info@parentcoachesunleashed.com, Instagram. Please reach out. We would love to hear from you.
Thanks for being with us today.